What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Coast to Coast. I'm Ronan Gaine. Joining me, as always, Chris Nambu. Thank you so much for making this your first podcast for NBA coverage. Remember, you like what you're hearing, make sure you subscribe. Or if you're on YouTube, leave a comment. Let us know what you guys think. You're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Leave that 5-star review. You that keep using that content. On today's episode, we're going to be looking at the teams that have the most pressure to deliver next season. Last week, we looked at some of the players that are really going to be under the cosh going into the 25-26 season. Now we're looking at the bigger picture, the teams that are under the most pressure, and we're actually going to rank them this week. There are going to be a few that we left off. Maybe some obvious ones that we know everyone already knows are under a lot of pressure, but we are going to go in depth on 6 teams. But before we get into it all, Chris, how you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. Pretty good. Football. Well, actually, I'm better. Let me say that. If anyone knows, watched a little bit of football on Monday night. I'm still recovering a little bit from that, but we're here not to talk about football, thankfully for me. I'm excited to talk about some of these teams here. We're going from most expectations, or at least where we start here.
I mean, let's like start somewhere in the middle because we're gonna be talking, and we're obviously like we're not going to talk about the Milwaukee Bucks on this episode. They obviously are a team that are under pressure, but they're just such a mess. It's like, who even knows what are we going to see from the Milwaukee Bucks? Is the only reason they're under pressure because if they fail, they'll lose Giannis? Like, who really knows? Like, what's going to be the change there? What's going to be the difference? But one team that we know is always going to be under pressure, always going to be under a microscope, and that, of course, is the Los Angeles Lakers. I think that's a good place to start. They're a team where they're somewhat in the middle. They're obviously still the Lakers. They still have Luka Doncic, LeBron James. They're still always going to be expected to be winning no matter what players they have, no matter what type of season it might be. They're always going to be expected to win. But this is also a team where maybe we're like, this is a transition. They've got Luka under contract now. So maybe we're also kind of just watching how they continue to make moves around their roster to build a challenging team around Luka for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah, I'd say pressure will definitely come from the move side of things. Obviously, being the biggest move that we've seen in the last 2 decades, if not history of the NBA, last year with acquiring Luka. A little bit more quiet in the offseason. We already talked about DeAndre Ayton last year and the amount of pressure that's on him. But kind of a freebie. And, making small moves around the perimeter, getting Jake LaRavia in as well. We'll see how Marcus Smart goes. But I think everyone expects that 2 things are going to be true. One, that LeBron will continue to put pressure, and the thoughts of him retiring, thoughts of him not returning will continue to come. And subsequent to that is, are these little moves enough? Are they going to have to push to get more done? The front office, always under scrutiny. I think they're always getting lucky. Do they get lucky again, or do they get creative here to get another guy in with Luka? I feel like it's pretty clear what their priority is. Their priority is Luka. Their priority is the future. The pressure will be on for them to stand firm on that. I mean, if LeBron continues to, push pressure that this front office needs to win now, maybe get in more vets, and not really develop their guys, I'm interested to see where that pressure goes. Especially in the context of, hey, you got to develop your younger guys. One of those younger guys is your son. So how many minutes is he going to play? But yeah, I think a lot of pressure for sure on the construct of this roster and what they end up having to do halfway through the season, depending on what we see.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is a team that they finished at the 3 seed last year, which you almost would completely forget about after the way that they performed in the playoffs, where they just could not deal with the size and strength of the Minnesota Timberwolves. And they were it fell into their lap with DeAndre Ayton being able to actually get a guy who we still think could potentially be like a guy who could maybe push the realms of being a top 10, top 15 center in the NBA. That fell into their laps. Marcus Smart, in a kind of similar sense, that also kind of fell in their laps after he was bought out. And then like LaRavia, like those are 3 guys they're kind of taking swings on. Like, you're looking at LaRavia, can he finally prove himself to be a really like strong, solid rotation piece in a winning team? Is Ayton still up to that level of playing top level center basketball? And can Marcus Smart come in? Can Marcus Smart come in and fill like a Alex Caruso type role for this Lakers team? Like, that's kind of what they're kind of banking on. They need that little bit of extra help defensively, especially when their backcourt is so often Austin Reeves and Luka Doncic. You're not going to get too much defensive help there. So they're really hoping that Smart can come in and be healthy and make up that kind of difference likely as an impact player off the bench, but maybe also getting some starting minutes in there as well. They're taking risks on these guys, but they're also risks that they're doing on the cheap and could really pay off for them.
Yeah. Now, I really hold this guy to higher standards than that. I think he's already proven to be a good rotation piece. He showed it in the Grizzlies. He showed it minutes in the Kings. I think he'll be better than Rui, to be honest. I think Rui has proven that he's too inconsistent, and I think that he's probably gonna end up losing minutes to him. What about just in terms of thinking about players and their depth, which has been an issue, and their guard play? Gabe Vincent, we've seen too many flashes of. Does Dalton Connect get a longer look here this season? Like, does the leash get a little bit longer? Do we allow him to make more mistakes? Or does Redick, rather, allow that to happen? His development is really important. And depending on if you're going to give Bronny some more minutes as well, like his development, maybe that matters as well, just in terms of keeping LeBron happy. The depth chart here is interesting because this roster, the lineups could be going so many different ways, but just becomes increasingly difficult to make the defense successful with Dorian Finney-Smith there. Do we expect them to recreate some of that defensive spark that they have, the positionless basketball, the amount of switching that they could have done, just how stalwart they were at the end of last season? Could we expect them to do that again without Dorian Finney-Smith? That's going to be tough.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of asking like Rui Hachimura to kind of almost be like their lead guy in that sense. Who's a guy we know has never been an amazing defender. He's fine, but also has his frailties there. I think that's why they're still being quite strongly linked with Andrew Wiggins in Miami. If they can get a good price on him, they're going to look to make a move for him. He'd be kind of a pretty strong like replacement for a guy like DFS. That's a guy I think that's kind of the area that they're looking to make moves in. I think to be able to continue to do that because we know LeBron's going to obviously take another step back defensively, as we kind of have seen most years as he's aged. He's kind of put more focus into the offensive end, which is understandable. He's not going to be able to be that like lead defensive piece. Like it has to start with Ayton, and then the other guys around them really have to step up their game. Like the likes of Luka and Rui and guys like that are really going to have to step up in a big way, or once again this Lakers team is just going to fall by the wayside. If not in the regular season, it's going to hit them in the playoffs. You can't go into the playoffs if you can't play legitimate defense. You're not going to win many games. But they need to see growth from a guy like Dalton Connect, like him potentially emerging as like a legitimate like spark plug scorer off their bench. Like that would make such a big difference to this rotation and really kind of make you think twice, look twice at this Lakers team as a team that maybe can potentially still cause some upsets and go on a run in the Western Conference.
Yeah, I mean, upsets is a interesting way to put it because have we now kind of relegated them back to what we thought they were going to be last season? Have they not increased our expectations? Or are we just back to square one?
I think we're back to what we kind of expected when Luka first arrived, and then they kind of were able to still go on this run. But at the same time, I expect Luka to come back as the 23-24 version we saw of Luka, where he averaged a near 33-point triple-double and was right up there in the race for MVP. I expect to see that from Luka. I'm just interested to see how far that can take this Lakers roster.
Yeah. I think the pressure feels low, at least to the front office, and what we've seen them do. Pressure will be put on by LeBron, but I think Luka just continues to play ball. We'll see if this, the athleticism we've seen from him in Eurobasket, the way he's looked physically more in shape, and I think this year, maybe it's the most convinced I've been, maybe, but I feel like low pressure for him. I feel like this team is just riding the high. They got Luka. They did better than they thought. Now it's build for the future. Develop these guys around him. And if LeBron ends up getting another Magic run, cool. If they don't, fine. It's interesting that the pressure seems to be lower than I would think for a team with Luka and LeBron, where you could have spun it a totally different way. The front office could have been like, hey, like we got LeBron as Robin, let's go all in on this iteration. But it feels like they're probably doing the right thing and taking things a little bit slower and not wasting their assets all at once after they almost did it for Mark Williams. So they learned pretty quick, I guess.
Sure. For sure, yeah, no, they are definitely playing it right at the moment. But at the same time, once the season actually gets going, and like LeBron James is still on the team, the media as a whole will paw the pressure on the Lakers, because at the end of the day, there's kind of two, three, four teams in the NBA that no matter what the year it is, there's always going to be pressure on them, and the Lakers are absolutely one of them. But let's move it over to a different team that pretty much there's never ever really pressure on, but they've made some big roster moves over the last couple of years, and now maybe the pressure is on. Let's talk about the Orlando Magic.
I think they have so much pressure to go where they thought they were going to be last season. Last season, I think they were the first names that would come out of anyone's mouth when talking about big surprises in the East. And it just seemed like an easy bet that, hey, this team is probably going to be a playoff team, might even be a top 5 seed. So for them to have fallen this far, I feel like there's a reckoning that I feel like the Magic feel like they need to unleash on the league, that they need to show that, hey, if we're healthy, we're good. So the pressure is on them not only as a team to succeed, but a lot of these individual guys, these young guys to prove, are they future all-stars? Are they true, like, all defensive guys? Young guys like Anthony Black of like, hey, you're interesting, but are you actually going to be a rotation piece on this team that just made a big deal to contend further in the playoffs? A lot of individual expectations, a lot of questions about different groups on this team. Is the front court good enough? So you can really go up and down the roster, and not just in terms of individual success, but how these guys synergize. The most blatant question we should probably talk about first is, Paolo Banchero, him being a true number one. Is that going to work long term next to Franz Wagner? Two guys that we think are very talented, but have a lot of overlap. So I feel like biggest pressure is going to stem from that.
Yeah, totally. Like Banchero, this kind of feels like the year for Banchero to really kind of break out and pop off. Like I think he was going to do it last year were it not for the injury. Like he still had a great stat line over the year. Like it was still like a career year, like 26, 7.5 boards, basically 5 assists. But of course he only played 46 games. Let's see him do that. Let's see him go and play 65 plus this year. Let's see. Well, hopefully we get to see him play 82, but that doesn't really happen too much in the NBA these days. So let's be realistic and we'll say 73. But this is like a year we want to go and see him. Go be all NBA. Go show that you are the number one pick. Go show that you are almost like another coming of a LeBron James type of player who can kind of do it all. Who can play make, who can make his teammates better, who can score the basketball at will, but also rebound the ball, play defense, and set up others. Like that's what Orlando expect from Paolo Banchero, and I think going into year 4 now, it's really time for him to show it. And there's not really any more excuses for him. I think the pressure is on him to deliver this year. And again, in the Eastern Conference, where there's a few teams have they're not bowing out, but they're not going to be as good as they were last year. And Orlando have to be one of the teams that take advantage of that, and they have to be one of the teams that are a lot better this year.
Yeah, and I think as a front office, in terms of the moves they've made and the direction they're accelerating towards, trading 2 first-round picks for Desmond Bane was no joke. I mean, it wasn't a complete jettisoning of all the assets they have, but it made it pretty close. And they have one young guy that they could reasonably move. I think you envision that Suggs is probably a part of their untouchable core. Unless it's for a star, which is, that's always a possibility. But I think they're defining this team as a move and a half away. Like Desmond Bane was supposed to be a key piece if they believe that they don't need to go beyond their core, that Paolo Banchero is enough, that you're going to get even more improvement from Franz. He's going to get back to his, he's going to find his shot, that Anthony Black is going to turn into a good player. The Desmond Bane success really may translate to a lot of the expectations that this team as a whole, because very simple question is, can they shoot the ball? The worst 3-point shooting team in the league, and this is in the context of Paolo Banchero being constantly doubled, Franz Wagner constantly breaking down defenses and sucking in a second defender, and they generated a lot of open threes, just not ones that they could have capitalized on. So just what they can get out of Bane, not to mention the improvements that they hope they get out of everyone else, would be huge. I mean, that would answer so many of our questions.
Yeah, now Bane is kind of like he really is. There is a lot of pressure on his shoulders. I guess he's like a 1B sort of star, but we're kind of going into this season kind of putting like 1A expectations on him purely as a shooter. Like, does his ability to shoot the basketball unlock the rest of this team? Does having a legitimate guy who can shoot 40% from deep on high volume, does that just open up the spaces for other guys and allows the likes of Franz and Paolo to get up to around league average? And that's kind of what we're asking. We're not saying Paolo and Franz got to go and shoot 40% from deep. They just got to get up to league average on decent volume. If they do that alongside a Bane who can really thrive as a 3-point shooter, and that can be kind of his main offensive input on this team. If that's how this plays out, then you're looking at the Magic totally differently. But like you said, they're the worst 3-point shooting team in the league. If they're anything close to that again, they aren't going to compete in the NBA and in the modern NBA, I should say. And then that, of course, puts a bit of pressure on the HC. I know this is Orlando. They're not going to make any rash decisions, and he's done great work there. But this has got to be a year. They finally made big moves. They're kind of finally paying up that big salaries for guys. This is kind of a year where they definitely need to win a playoff series, or else could be on his way out.
That's exactly where I was going to go with this, because I think we have so much respect for how Mosley has impacted the culture of this team, and of course the front office in getting in the right guys. I mean, they drafted for character and talent, of course, but they drafted guys that they knew were going to commit to the defensive end and sacrifice on that end of the floor. But if the bare minimum is winning a playoff series, that's a lot of pressure for Mosley. I mean, this team has not shown that they're quite there yet, but we'll see. That would be a huge development if they were to have to move on from him, and it would almost be just one of those rash decisions that you hope that they wouldn't make, but you understand when it happens. You understand that when these young teams kind of grow out of their situation, it's almost like a wake-up call. We've seen that in the Kings. We've seen it everywhere, but hopefully that's not the outcome, because I think Jamal has done such a great job with this team and developing these guys and really creating a culture there that they haven't had for years.
Yeah, no, I mean, hopefully this isn't the case, or I should say more hopefully we see this Magic team really kind of step up to the mark this year, and they'll be a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. They'll go and win a playoff series, and then we'll be like really high on this team moving forward. It's just like this is modern times. Like, guys don't only get so much time. Like, if we see Banchero come out and have an All NBA type season, we see kind of Bane hitting his shot, and then we get to the playoffs and they fall short in the first round again, then you kind of look at it and it's like, okay, Mosley did a great job getting us to this level, but maybe we need someone else to take us to the next level. And like, that can be the right decision or the wrong decision. You don't know until it actually happens. I think that he has got the pieces there to work with. This, you can make the argument, maybe they're not as deep as they once were, but this is probably the best roster he's ever had to work with in Orlando. So I think we should see the best from him this year. And I'm not rooting for him to get fired. I'm backing him to silence those doubts and go and achieve what he needs to achieve this year.
Do we think that we're going to see anything of their young guys? Specifically, Jet Howard. We talked about them needing shooting, and he's coming in his third year now, and he's not played any significant minutes. He's not been able to provide that shooting when that's literally what they drafted him for. They drafted a guy who's supposed to become like a volume perimeter shooter, and we haven't seen that. Maybe that's another interesting pressure point for Mosley is, hey, can you find a way to get this guy involved, or does he just not have that talent level?
Yeah, that's definitely, there is pressure there, because I think that's obviously, like we said, they desperately need shooting, and if a guy like him is sitting there on your bench, you got to find a way to get him some minutes. I don't know if it's just a question of he's got the work ethic, he's really not there as an NBA level player, or is it worries about maybe what he can do defensively. I think they've got enough cover for that, so I think they got to try and work in any ways that they can get shooting into this team. I think they really have to go and try and do it.
Yeah,
pressure's on Orlando for sure. I know it's Orlando, so there's never going to be that much pressure on them, especially in the context where maybe you're talking about the Lakers. But this is a year, the first time in a long time, maybe the first time since, I don't know, the year after they went to the finals, that there's like real pressure on this Orlando team to go out and do big things. But we'll see how that goes. The Eastern Conference, it's wide open there. The opportunity is going to be there for them to go and take it. But over in the Western Conference, it's a little bit more closed off. But one of the better teams in the Western Conference made a big swing this summer, and now they have to go and really double down on it and succeed with this guy on their team. I'm talking about the Houston Rockets.
Yeah, it's interesting how they've already vaulted themselves into this level of expectation where they were a team last season, would have been exciting if they're just in the play-in tournament. They end up being in the top four consistently throughout the last part of the season. And now, top two. It's funny when we say top two or top five or whatever in these teams when it's like they were separated by half a game sometimes by tiebreakers and everything. But I think that they did not have a lot of consistent movement out of the top four. They just became very consistent at what their product of basketball is. So now we go from a team that we weren't even sure if they were going to be in the playoffs to now expecting them to do what? I think that's my question here. Is what is our base expectation for this team, who obviously now they have Kevin Durant. We have a little bit of playoff experience under the belts of these young guys. And we have guys entering a little bit later in their young careers like Tyrese, and this is kind of prove-it time for him. This is not quite prove-it time for Amen Thompson, but I think we got a taste of what he could be, and maybe this is really a breakout year for him, even more than last year. But what's our basic expectation for what this team should be able to do throughout the course of the season?
I mean, they have to be. They've got to be looking at themselves and say we are going to be the number one challenger to the Oklahoma City Thunder in the regular season and in the playoffs. Like that's the way they have to look at it. There's no falling back. It's like, oh, we're still young. Like there's that can be a thing at the end of the season, but during the season, like going into the season now, their whole mindset has to be we're the number one challengers. We were the number 2 seed last year. We fell a little bit short. We made a big move for a high level playoff performer who can still put up 30 points a night anytime he wants with ease. Now we have to go and deliver. We have to go and win. This is the time for the Rockets. It's time for them to go win. That's it.
Is there any pressure to maintain? Do we think that they're going to maintain that same level of intensity defensively as they did last year? Like have that same sort of drive, even without a guy like Dylan Brooks? How much of that?
I mean, we'll see how much of an impact that has, but at the same time, they're also a team that didn't win anything in the postseason. That always helps to kind of fuel the fire that little bit extra. Like the way they went out, obviously they forced it to 7 games in the end, but going out in that first round was obviously super disappointing for them, even though maybe at the start of the year they weren't expecting to be there. So I think losing always helps to fuel the fire that little bit more. So we will see like how much of an impact, how important a guy like Dylan Brooks was to keeping those high intensity levels up on defense. But you hope that Amen Thompson could easily just kind of fill in that role now, and then he can be the focal point of that defense. That's kind of the next step up for him in a way, that they can stay that good, and obviously you hope that they're going to be even more polished offensively as well, so they're not going to have to rely on the defense as much.
Yeah, I think pressure on their young guys for sure. I think Amen had a lot of benefit of not having defenses really ready for him and just really leaving him open and allowing a lot of space to drive. But teams know what he's up to now. Teams know, how he likes to play. They know his tendencies. And Tari now is going to have even more opportunity, but we've seen him have a lot of mental lapses. We've seen him be careless with the ball. We've seen him take shots out of rhythm of the offense. And he's going to have a much bigger role here to play. Jabari, too. I mean, Dylan Brooks was, I think, even a bigger stabilizer, even though he made some boneheaded plays. He was a decisive guy, and we knew what we were going to get from him. But these young guys, I think a lot of pressure on them to grow up fast and to take an even bigger step here for them to contend, because I think they can contend against the Thunder. Just depends on the development. Durant's too old now to be, this should not be a Kevin Durant show. Can't become that. He doesn't have to carry this team, and he shouldn't. He should be able to kind of ease into a regular season, take over a couple times here and there, but really got to save him for the playoffs. The pressure's on them to make sure that he doesn't have to play too big of a role. We know he won't defensively, but offensively, we can't see him carrying the load.
No, I think obviously they're still paying enough money, so there's still expectations there to be good, but I think it's important that we see a much more polished version of Alperen Şengün this year. He's kind of improved year on year, but he still has that rawness to him, especially we saw a lot of it in the playoffs. Still just kind of chaotic with his handle sometimes, and his shot just completely goes to shit in certain situations. I don't think we can afford to see that this year. I like the look of him in Eurobasket. He had some nice plays there for playing for Turkey. So I'm hoping we're going to see him just to be that little bit of extra polish to his game. We're going to see less of those games where he's going like 2 of 7 at the free throw line and shooting nearly 40% from the field, even though most of his shots are coming inside of the perimeter. I think that he needs to try to eliminate as much of that from his game as he possibly can, and that should be he should be the platform for how they build their offense and who they really start to play through, relying a little bit less on the playmaking of Fred VanVleet and not fully relying on the all-round scoring superpowers of Kevin Durant. I think that pressure needs to fall on Şengün, and I think it's fair that this is the time that we kind of look to him to really be that, have that breakout moment and really kind of be the offensive star, offensive hub of this team.
Yeah, I think losing Green kind of simplifies that. You're not starting games out trying to get your guard hot, trying to make sure that Green's getting the flow of the offense. Maybe a lot of things get more simplified into Fred VanVleet, Şengün get in pick and rolls, Şengün, attacking mismatches, Şengün playmaking from the middle of the floor, and that can be a much more easy way to start interior offense as opposed to trying to get your guard hot and throughout the whole season trying to figure out, okay, who's the guy that we need to work this thing around, because I think it's been pretty consistent over the whole year that we saw this offense be better when things were focused around getting shots in the paint, getting Şengün involved, and really working the boards the way that they did.
Yeah, and of course, and obviously as well, they've obviously made important decisions in the offseason. They've brought back Clint Capella, they got in a Kogi, they got a DFS. They spent money to kind of really build out and give this team great depth and great rotation. I think DFS, they're hoping can be a bit of a cover for Dillon Brooks, even though he won't be a starter on this team. We saw the impact that he had defensively on that Lakers team last year. So I think they've got great depth now. And like I said at the start of the conversation about the Rockets, there's no more excuses now. I think it is their time to win. And one thing important to mention on the coach, I'm not saying there's pressure on him. I think he's a great coach and he's going to deliver for them. But can you please find a way to integrate Reed Shepherd into the lineup, into the rotation, I should say, maybe not into the lineup, but into the rotation? That's something that I'm really looking forward to seeing, if Reed as a player is ready for it, and if Udoka can integrate him into this team that are looking to be effectively the number one seed in a stacked Western Conference. Yeah,
a lot of pressure there for sure. Fred VanVleet won't be there forever. We've seen Fred too often have to play a little bit of hero ball to create some offense. Reed's got to look good this year. A lot of that's on him too. Got to see what Udoka's willing to have him do. And just speaking about picking up roles, there's going to be a role for perimeter movement shooter. Jalen Green wasn't that wasn't his skill set, and that's something that at times they wanted him to be, but Reed can be that. So there's a big need, big role to fill, and big expectations. I think Reed Shepherd's going to be a big part of how they meet them this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess we're talking about there is pressure on them, obviously. What are your expectations for Rockets this season? I'm going to say close that gap on OKC in the regular season, be at least the number 2 seed, and close that gap on the OKC during the regular season, and of course win a playoff series.
Yeah, I think it's no less than that. I don't disagree with that. I think that it's perfectly postured that they are the competing factor to the Thunder. They have the same amount of youth that they believe are going to get better. They have the same amount of depth that they think can be consistent night in, night out. They have that same level of defense that could take them deep in a playoff series. And now they picked up a star. Where is any role for them besides being that team to push OKC? And they need that. I love that. We haven't seen a team like the Warriors, for example, who had their dynasty. They had the Rockets. And the Rockets could be that again. But I think they have even more depth, more talent, more kind of end situations that they're really fascinating. We have no idea what this team could look like in 3 years from now. And not to say that it means it'll get better, but there's just so many unique talents on this team, unique kinds of styles of play that, with the Harden era, you knew it was either going to be Harden or die. But we don't know. I mean, what's the end player that we see grow from a guy like Amen Thompson? Does Jabari Smith have really that next level that some people still think he does? I think there's a lot of people still in the Reed Shepherd camp that thought his ceiling was a diet version of Steph Curry. Who knows if that's still a player that they have waiting on the wings there. So they need all that to make sure that they keep up the OKC, because, man, I just can't. Besides the salary cap, there's not really many other teams that are going to stack up against them.
No, no, absolutely. The pressure's on. No, the pressure's on Houston, and I guess probably Denver as like the realistic options to somehow slow slow the roll of the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I look forward to seeing how it goes down. But yeah, pressure on Houston for sure. Let's flick it back over to the West. Our top three here, or flip back over to the East, I should say. Our top three here, all Eastern Conference teams. One somewhat in the middle, but also a team that we should be expecting more from. The Atlanta Hawks. What do you think about them?
I think that they will not be in the middle for long. Talked a little bit about Trey. We talked about the fact that since 2021, they've done absolutely nothing. I mean, they've gone from being an Eastern Conference contender, Trey Young being the villain of the league, to being no better than a play-in team, forgotten, not really developing much, and making bad trade after bad trade. And now we look at a roster that they're coming into. This has to be the most complete roster we've seen around Trey Young. A team that makes sense with a coach that we can believe in. So there's so much momentum going for this team. I don't know if pressure is the right word, but it's got to feel that way for a lot of these guys who, Dyson Daniels, he was cast off from the Pelicans. He's finally made a name for himself here. Now he's really an established part of what should be a winning team. Kill Alexander Walker getting his contract and being recognized. Hey, you are not just some rotation guy. You're a borderline starter level, high level playoff defender, two-way player, proving yourself as a shooter. And for KP, it's like, dude, he just had one of the most disappointing flops, and it wasn't his fault of being injured, but availability was always the issue. Like, he hasn't really contributed meaningfully to top end playoff success. Even when the Celtics won the championship, he had a couple good games, but he wasn't really available for much of that to really point to him as being the X factor. I think this is a season where KP is probably the biggest delta between what this team could be at its worst and its absolute best. If KP is that guy, they are a championship level team, maybe. But if he's not available, if he's not playing well, how good really is this team? And I think a lot of pressure is going to be on him to not just be himself, but be available.
Yeah, absolutely, and that can really help unlock the rest of this team. The availability of Chris Porzingis, that was a great move that they made, getting him in. And then you just turn and you look, and like now it's just like you put pressure on. This is the first year I think since he's been in Atlanta that there's like really true pressure on Quinn Snyder to kind of step up and show what he can do as a coach, show that he's still a top tier coach in the NBA. How quickly can he figure out the lineups, the best way to get the most out of Trey Young, the best way to get the most out of KP, out of Nikhil Alexander Walker, continue the development of Zachary Risache, reintegrating Jalen Johnson, who I think we're all excited to see after his season was cut short last year. Like, this team makes a lot of sense. This is the team. This arguably makes more sense than the team that Trey was able to lead to the Eastern Conference Finals way back when. So there's real pressure on Quinn Snyder to deliver this year and show his ability as a coach. And of course, there's always going to be huge pressure on Trey Young to get back to the level of being a top 5 point guard, maybe even pushing the realms of a top 10 player in the NBA. That's what Atlanta want from him. That's what they believe that he is capable of, and he's been given the best platform to show it again. So as much as there's pressure on Atlanta as a whole, I think Quinn Snyder as a coach and Trey Young as a superstar, the pressure is really on those two.
Yeah, I think they have all the perfect ingredients to make this work. You have your central star in Trey Young. You have a guy on a good contract that we think could be an all-star level player in Jalen Johnson. You have the defensive-minded guards and wings, positionless kind of guys who can really bring up that defensive intensity. And I'm excited to see another year of Onyeka Okongwu. I think he's starting to carve a bigger role. And I think we'll have some really interesting lineups with him on the floor next to Porzingis. Now there's going to be a little bit more perimeter gravity from more of their shooters. Look out to see what Okongwu could do. But all of these ingredients, I think, will lead to a successful team around Quinn Snyder. I'm interested to see how defensively, what they end up ranking out as. I think they can sneakily be one of the best defensive teams in the league. We saw that the Hawks were pretty much average, even though Dyson Daniels was having an incredible year. But now he's got Nikhil Alexander Walker next to him. He's got KP behind him. And now you see another year out of Zachary Richausset. I think that their defense could be top 10, maybe even a little bit better than that.
Yeah, maybe that could be like the area where they kind of really surprise, and that's kind of the area that's kind of the jump start to the season, like finding that solidity defensively, and it's not all about Trey playing hero ball or being like that unlocked force on the offensive end. They can rely sometimes on their defense too. We still know, but this team, their best asset is going to be their offense with Trey and KP and Jalen Johnson and Richausset. But if they can step up and really kind of find that spark defensively, the one that Chris Porzingis was a key part of in Boston that championship year, throughout that whole regular season, he was incredible. As long as you can have him as your centerpiece there, it's a great building block for them. So that's going to be really, really exciting to see moving forward. Is that the defensive side of the ball for this Atlanta Hawks team? That's a great point. I'm very excited.
Yeah, I think there's such a power vacuum in the Eastern Conference that I almost wonder, like on a night-to-night basis, like how polished are these Eastern Conference teams going to be? Because I feel like every year we think about, oh, these teams are going to get better, there's season injuries, and then they just beat themselves somehow. And it was so funny, we started this podcast by saying, like, we're not even going to include the Bucks because they're just constantly under pressure, but man, I mean, they have to, we could spend this entire podcast talking about that, especially the ramifications of where Giannis will go. But I think we'll go to another team that has another fallen star, and I'm really curious where we'll go after this season.
Yeah, let's talk Philadelphia 76ers. I mean, the only reason they're not number one on this list is purely based off the fact that I think all of us are really unsure about how much of Joel Embiid we're going to get to see this year. I mean, if he's not on the court, that somewhat takes the pressure off, but it also leads to more pressure in the future. Like, what the hell do they do with this roster? Like, they gave that extension to Embiid. Like, who is going to want to take on that money for a guy that seems to never be able to touch the floor? And who knows if he's ever going to play a full season in the NBA again. Fingers crossed, touch wood, I hope we get to see it, because when Joel Embiid is at his best, he is without doubt one of the best players in the entire NBA. He has so much talent. He is an underrated defender and one of the best scorers in the entire league. So if they can find a way to get him healthy, then the pressure just ramps up. I mean, like, look at it. Like, last year, just so bad. The 13th seed, 24-58 record. This is a team that they're paying lots of guys. They brought in Paul George, and now he's another year older. And the health of Embiid, like this, we're still believing in the process here. This is Philly always making moves, always in and around it, but never really going and doing it. And this is another year of that. And there's always gigantic pressure on the Philadelphia 76ers.
Do you think they should just rest Embiid until the playoffs? Rest Paul George until the playoffs? I'm like half joking. Do you think that they can make a playoff spot?
They could probably still be in a top 8 seed if they did that.
If you were top 8 seed, I think you could still make it top 10 even. I think that they could literally rest their guys and just play Maxey, just play McCain, let Edgecombe go crazy, let him get all this experience, and just, you're going to get 20 rebounds a night out of Andre Drummond. Let him rest. Yeah, let him come back in February, post All-Star break. I think we haven't even seen 5-on-5 Embiid this summer yet. I think he just started this week.
I mean, that's good. I didn't even hear that. That's great news. That's a positive. I mean, yeah, that probably still, who knows when we'll actually get to see him playing NBA minutes. But yeah, there's like, ease him back in every way possible. Maybe not with Paul George. Embiid for sure. Wait till the last month of the season, and then just have him totally ramp up from there, and then hopefully come in hot for the playoffs. Like, that's got to be their mindset this year. Like, we always say, we just never ever get to see Joel Embiid healthy in the playoffs. So yeah, maybe the answer is rest him for the entire regular season and then bring him in for the last month and see if that idea works any better. But
yeah,
I mean, there's just so much pressure on them as a whole just to find a way to get him on the floor. It's just it changes everything.
Yeah, I will say that as a fan who's been in this sort of position of hope before, when it became apparent that Derrick Rose was not going to be Derrick Rose after the second injury, and then it took a couple of years after that to realize that he was never going to reach your best player on a very good team level anymore. And this might be the year where we kind of make that conclusion about Joel Embiid, that he is so talented, he is so good, but he just can't reach that level. And the 76ers are in a really unique position because you could argue they've lucked into some pretty much the best possible situation for a team that's losing their star year after year. So they got Tyrese Maxey. I think he can keep getting better. Got Jared McCain. I think we're really excited about how he could be. VJ Edgecombe is such a blank slate. We've even seen him make some strides in Summer League. How good could he be? This is such a young, fast team in a league that wants to play young and fast.
There's Justin Edwards as well, another bright young talent they've got.
Yes. And I think that they got to look at what's happened in Golden State and realize that they're nowhere even close to how good they had it because they don't have a player to level of Steph Curry. And this is kind of a word of caution, like, hey, you got these young guys, you have opportunity, like, how much do you keep wasting your time focusing on the wrong timeline? I don't know if they have time to do that if this season proves that Embiid just won't be that guy. I think we already know that Paul George is really limited at this point. I think the pressure will be on them to decide what are their future goals. Do they continue just to build towards the future and maybe see what makes sense to support that strategy as opposed to winning now with Embiid?
Yeah, now this is, I mean, arguably this has to be the last year, the last hurrah. If he can't be healthy,
you think it's the last?
I think it could be. The only reason that it won't be is because both he and Paul George are still under contract for such a long time, and it's going to be so nigh on impossible to deal the size of that contract for potentially the player that teams are going to get. That's the only reason why Philly will continue to push, and this is Philly. They're always trying to win. Philly sports fans are never happy, and Philly sports teams are always like in the mix. Maybe they're not quite there, but they're never going to fully give up or never like fully tank. That just doesn't really happen with Philadelphia sports teams. I think this could be the last because I think especially if we see another year of growth out of McCain, we see a lot of promise from Edgecombe. We know we've gotten from Maxey, see more growth from Edwards. They're going to look at that core and go, do we just switch our attention to these guys and really look and focus on developing them and see where we go from there? Like that could very easily be a transition that Philadelphia chooses to make. It's not like they don't have the players on the roster already. It's not like this is the idea of other players that they might be able to get or future draft assets or anything like that. They've got players on their roster right now that they need to be developing. That's where the potential for giving up on the Embiid Paul George run that we at this stage have never got to see anything of. That's where it's kind of like a realistic option for giving up there.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe there's a new owner that buys a different team, and they want to go out and risk it for Paul George and Embiid to really go for a one-year championship. It's a possibility. Could have a Brooklyn Nets 2.0 kind of situation just waiting around the corner.
Yeah, and if they get picks that turn into Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum down the line, that'll just make it all the sweeter for Philadelphia. But they'll probably mess that up somehow, you know. But yeah, Philly, it's going to be a tough one. Philly, you really got to show up. Paul George, I mean, yeah, you can say that his legacy is already cemented and little things like that, but this is
what is his legacy?
Chance that, I guess you're kind of looking at it as a guy that was hampered by injuries in a way. A guy that never fully was able to reach his potential. We saw that year we had an OKC and then not really ever seeing anything close to that again. I think injuries are going to tell the biggest tale of his career, but this is a chance if he can just at least just recoup his form, get back to like what we saw in Los Angeles. He doesn't have to be the superstar league guy here, but like a 20-point per game scorer, a good defender, like just the little things we need to see that we really didn't see anything of last year. Like he's got to show something for the huge contract that Philadelphia gave him.
At least be that on the defensive end for them. I don't know.
Yeah, and like let Maxey take the heat as like the lead scorer, and even like guys like McCain and some others around there. It's not, he doesn't have to do it be all impact on both ends. He just has to be a guy who's somewhat worthy of the contract that Philadelphia are paying him. But
somewhat.
But yeah, that's Philly. Sorry, Philly fans. It could be another rough one, but hopefully there's some sort of bounce back, and hopefully we get to see PG and then Embiid on the floor together, and we get to see a legitimate playoff run, because then it could be exciting. Let's talk about the number one on this option. My boys, I think this is the team that are under the most pressure this year. the New York Knicks. The 3 seed last year, Eastern Conference Finals, went out in pretty annoying fashion after taking down the Celtics. We thought maybe this is our time to go to the NBA Finals. Blew that game 1 in pathetic fashion against the Pacers, and that was just it from there, even though we managed to go to 6 games. They made the decision to fire Tom Thibodeau. They've hired Mike Brown. That is a decision they absolutely have to get. Has to be the right one. There's no ifs or buts. Like, they made that huge call to fire Tibbs. In my heart, I do believe it was the right call. I think Tibbs got us back to relevancy. We need another coach to really take us to the top level that this team is capable of. Hopefully that's Mike Brown, but that's a decision they had to get right. We will see as the season goes on whether they did or not. And then, of course, you're looking at it and Tatum's out, Halliburton's out, Pacers down, Celtics down. The 2 teams that have effectively stood in our way in the Eastern Conference are out. They've added more depth to this team. This is the best roster they've had probably in years and decades. They have the 3rd highest payroll in the NBA. This is their best chance maybe to ever win a title or get to the NBA Finals. There is just ginormous pressure on the New York Knicks this year.
Yeah, I don't think that this is going to be one of those teams that regular season wins are going to only get them so much clout, but regular season losses are going to be just so catastrophic for their news cycle. We saw it last year. They were terrible against good teams. They choked out on some bad games. They just were not consistently at stretches of looking like top team in the league, and then would just throw up a stinker. And there was just never any rhyme or reason for it either. It would just be comparative effort. It would just be them getting away from what they are good at. It's Cat having great games and then not doing much the next game. But I think we've seen the best. And over the course of the season, I think if you average everything out, just look, they were 9th and 7th, defensively, offensively, respectively. And to be a top team in net rating, in defensive rating and offensive rating throughout the whole year is something that I don't think we necessarily expected. If you just look back on it, I think they'll be a lot better this year. But who do you think has the most pressure on this team?
I mean, I guess the most pressure is on Mike Brown. I guess, like, how does he take this team to the next level? How does he does he take the ball out of Jalen Brunson's hands a little bit more? Is there less pressure on Jalen Brunson to be the entire offense, to be the hero? And can we get more consistency out of Cat? Can we also continue to get the performances we got offensively from OG last year? I think it's all on Mike Brown, because that's going to be like the first plug that's pulled if things aren't going great. The pressure is going to immediately be on him, and then there's going to be doubts around his future. I think so. I think in terms of who the most pressure's on, I think it's definitely Mike Brown, coming in after what Tom Thibodeau has done over the last few years, bringing the Knicks back to relevancy, and with some probably still thinking maybe he should have been given another year. I don't think so. I think Mike Brown is capable of getting more out of this team, but the pressure is definitely on him the most.
Absolutely. There's no one who has more pressure. You have all the pieces to be a championship level team, and everyone's always just looked at what Thibodeau has done and be like, oh, if it was someone else, we just had someone else. He's so archaic. Minutes. But what is going to be different is Brunson actually going to play differently. He's had to play hero ball, and he's also wanted to play hero ball. Like, that is his style of play. An offense that is stuck in the mud sometimes, just watching Jalen Brunson dribble for 10 seconds is not going to be a good offense if he misses that shot. There's just not a lot of variability to the offense at times when you got weapons like OG, you got weapons like Mikal, and I think we saw a little bit more of what Mikal has, a little bit more Brooklyn Nets style towards the end of the season, but wasn't always there. It's not always there constantly. He's not always a consistent threat. I'm hoping that we see that Mikal takes another step forward, gets a little bit more comfortable knowing his spots of when he should be stepping in as a primary creator on the offense. But how does Mike Brown incorporate that? It's very interesting roster that he has here that he's not had before. I think a lot of the hierarchies and priorities offensively were pretty much set out for him for every roster that he's coached before this. And while Jalen Brunson and Cat are obvious priorities here, there's a lot more weapons that he has to incorporate here. And I'm excited for that.
Yeah, and I'm hoping we continue to see more from Miles McBride. I think he like had moments where he like really popped off, especially in the playoffs last year. Let's hope. Hopefully, I'm looking forward to maybe seeing him get some more run with the starting unit, which is something we pretty much didn't see at all last year. Now we hopefully have a legitimate like veteran scorer off the bench in Jordan Clarkson, a guy that we
Yeah.
know. Yeah, he can go 0 for 10 on a night, but he can also go 8 for 9 on another night. Like he's going to be like that's going to be the up and down sort of scorer, but it's something that we haven't really ever had off the bench in the Jalen Brunson era. So integrating him is going to be huge. And also the big question is, does he go with the two big lineup or does he bring Mitchell Robinson off the bench? That's another thing that's going to be super interesting to watch.
Yeah, I loved what they were able to do with the size there in the playoffs. They just transformed into a totally different team, and I think just big respect to Mitch on his impact that a lot of times goes unnoticed. If he can stay healthy through the whole season, I mean, I think their defense, I mean, their offense gets better. Just we've seen how strong that they can be on the boards and how he just had to be completely pulled off the floor at times by the opposing teams. Like the fact that he had that much impact, I don't think I appreciated that enough. I never saw him being that much of an X factor for them. Besides just, you know, his defensive presence inside, being a good screener. I didn't think that his offensive rebounding would be like game breaking at times. And to have him for the full course of the season, and to allow Karl Anthony Towns to be a little bit more comfortable as a four, that should be something that I think they lean on, and we'll continue to see how they evolve throughout the whole season. But pressure's on for them to get it right and get it right early and get it right against the good teams. Something that they just could not do last season.
No, they have to like. There's like I know you can kind of look at it and say maybe okay they've shown enough in the regular season. It's all about the playoff success, but I think there's real pressure on this New York team to not only succeed in the playoffs, but also be the unequivocal best team in the Eastern Conference, have the best record, lay a marker down right from the first tip off this season, and go and dominate the Eastern Conference. Where obviously, like we said, we know no Halliburton for the Pacers, likely no Tatum for the whole season with Boston. They'll still be fine teams, but there's no excuses for the Knicks not being the best. It's kind of between, you guess you're looking at them and the Cavaliers. The Cavaliers were able to do it last year. Obviously, came up a little bit short. Still, some kind of questions around the health of some of their guys, like Darius Garland and like Jared Allen. There's still some kind of weird questions around there. So I think the Knicks need to take advantage of that, and they need to go not only reach the NBA Finals, which I think is the minimum now after getting to the conference finals last year, but also being the best team in the Eastern Conference. The pressure is just all on the New York Knicks this year, and they have to be the team without doubt under the most pressure going into the new season.
Yeah, it's almost not a fun position to be in because it's like all if you reach it, it's like, well, yeah, you should have
Yeah,
should have done that. And for a team that hasn't even made the finals yet, it's not great as a fan because I feel like your expectations are just so high. They haven't been able to do it yet, and the highs will not feel quite as high because you feel like you should be there, and the lows are going to feel real low when they will inevitably at times fail this season. But we'll see how they'll manage. I'm really curious to see if they are going to be consistent or if this is just going to be another season talking about how Cat isn't always engaged and Mikhail isn't worth that contract. And there's still just rumors about it. Do they want to make another move? Do they think that Mikhail is the right piece? He's a tradable piece. Obviously, with them being over the second apron, it becomes a little bit more difficult. But I'd love to see them be more consistent as opposed to us constantly thinking about this wheelhouse of talent.
yeah, absolutely. That's got to be the aim. And like I said, it's just like obviously they've been to one conference finals in the last 25 years, but at the same time, you're also looking around the Eastern Conference right now, and you're saying there is no team at this looking at it at this very moment. There is no team in the Eastern Conference that the Knicks shouldn't feel like they can beat in a playoff series. So why shouldn't they be aiming for the NBA Finals? You know,
Detroit has entered the chat.
that's one team I'm definitely looking forward to seeing this year. There is other teams that the pressure's not quite on as much, but we're still going to be intrigued to see how they develop after promising years last season. The Detroit Pistons are definitely one of them. Let's see another big year from Cade Cunningham. But I think that's going to do it for today's episode. Those are our big six. But hey, you guys let us know. Who do you think's under the most pressure to deliver a title or just a big year in 2026? I guess. Philly, maybe you'll rise again. Milwaukee, let's see what happens. The Clippers, all we're hearing about right now is the Clippers and the whole Kawhi Leonard situation. Let's see what goes on there. There's going to be so many more interesting narratives, and the season is still so far away. It's just crazy to think we're already talking about it, and it feels like it's getting so close now.
Yeah. Oh, we got to talk about Giddey. Is that a good deal or no? Quick hit.
Yes.
For who?
For both.
Yeah, probably. Probably right answer.
Fair amount of money to pay him. Still as tradable. Yeah, still a tradable deal. I think it kind of works out. I think that's exactly what he's worth in a sense. Especially he continues to develop, continues to be a guy who can maybe push the realms of having like a near, like a semi, like can he be like an 18, like 8 and 8 sort of player? Like he's capable of doing that. So I think the what he's getting paid is more than fair. And like you said, we were texting about this. As long as that shot continues to develop, I think it could look like a good deal down the line.
Yeah, I think it's tough for Chicago, where everyone has such little expectations at all that no one's really excited about it. We're all so tired of hoping our young guys turn into stars that I'm immediately looking at it like, well, maybe it's a tradable contract. We'll see. But I think he's surprised at the end of last season. He's got a lot of potential to get better, but the way that we've seen him play, it's just so unlikely that he reaches the apex that a lot of people are pegging him out to be, that he'll be this primary ball handling and off-ball shooting, and maybe he won't be such a negative on defense. And just the defensive side of it and the shot, I can't believe it. I can't believe in it, but he has an opportunity to prove me wrong. He has an opportunity to prove everyone wrong, and mediocrity is the standard in Chicago, so not a lot of pressure on him for what they end up doing.
Yeah, that's very fair, but that's enough about Chicago. We don't want you to get too depressed. I mean, the Bears, it's only one game into the season for the Bears. Yes, it was another bad loss, but hopefully they can bounce back this weekend. We shall see. Chicago Bears, just like, I mean, I had them in a parlay money line. Like, what the hell was I thinking? It was just crazy.
You were thinking so high of yourself in the third quarter.
Yeah, man, it was looking great, and then of course against a rookie QB, they just collapsed. But yeah, that's just Chicago Bears, and sadly for the Bulls, it's also a lot about mediocrity. But that's going to wrap today's episode. Thanks for sticking with us. Remember, we are on social media at Coast to Coast NBA, and most importantly, remember to take every shot and love every moment.
Peace out.